Being a leader is not about being the center of attention. Being a leader is about being the epicenter of action. Richard is a sought-after leader, coach, mentor, and co-author of the book, Poking the Cadaver, a forensic approach to public speaking. Fellow Toastmasters, let's welcome past international president Richard E. Peck with his presentation for us, Small Change, Big Impact. Small Change, Big Impact, Richard E. Peck.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you for that introduction. I didn't realize that this was such a punny club when I got the invite. So that was quite an interesting way to start, Ken. Let me ask you a question. By show of hands, whether they be virtual or just raising hands, how many of you think you can change the world? Quite a few of you. Don't you consider that to be a pompous view? After all, the world is comprised of 195 countries. There's over 8 billion people, 4,600 recognized religions, approximately 7,000 known languages worldwide. And you think you can change the world? Really? Well, that's all about perspective, isn't it? And what that means in trying to change the world. Now, I remember having that question asked to me when I was much, much younger. How are you going to change the world? I was really just worried about going out and playing after school, not worried about changing the world. That question kind of went along with, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't want to grow up right yet. I just want to be where I am. But the question about changing the world became more valuable to me when I joined Toastmasters. And it became more valuable when I went for my MBA in international business. See, there were two things that I was exposed to. One was culture, and two was the world at large. Oftentimes, I think we live somewhat siloed. How many of you have traveled the world? Not as many as thought they could change the world. How many of you have traveled outside your country? Now that's good to see. Because they say most people don't travel much farther than a few miles outside of where they were born. But it's by seeing the world that we can understand how we can change the world. It's by understanding individuals that we can understand how to make that impact. There's a video out on YouTube called The Power of Words. It's not Muhammad Khatami's world champion speech. It's a video that shows a blind gentleman sitting in front of what appears to be a church stairs. He has his cup out and he has his sign out. People are walking by, disregarding him, throwing coins wherever they feel they should throw them. But there is no respect for the individual. A woman comes by, stops in front of him, grabs his sign, picks it up, writes something on it, and puts it back down. The next thing you notice is that individuals are placing money in the cup, that they're showing respect for this individual, that their whole demeanor has changed. She comes back later and he asks her, "What did you do to my sign?" And her response was, "I said the same thing, only differently." See, his sign said, "I'm blind, please help." Her sign said, "It's a beautiful day and I can't see it." That simple change made an impact on that one individual. Think about everyone that you've interacted with. Think about every story you've told. Have you shared something that has changed their life, that has made an impact on them? And it doesn't have to be a big impact. It doesn't even have to be a change that you see. Sure, we like to see change. We like to see that individual being transformed. But it's that always the most important thing? Or is sometimes the biggest change, the deepest impact, the ones you don't see? Indulge me if you will. I know it's early, but I'd like you to close your eyes. Please don't start snoring. Close your eyes and clear your mind. Let your arms fall down to your sides. Imagine you're standing on the shore of a crystal clear, calm lake. In your hand has a very small pebble. Feel it, smooth. Get to know it. Now I want you to take your arm, bring it back, and toss that pebble into the water. Hear the plunk as it breaks the surface. See the ripples as they move out. Now open your eyes for a minute. You saw the change in the surface. Did that pebble stop making a change once it went below? No, it didn't. It continued to make that change. It continued to make an impact. You didn't see it, but you know it happened. When you tell stories that can help relate to individuals, it makes a change. I told this story over the weekend, so Freddie and Stephanie have already heard it. Well, many of you don't know was that in 2009, I was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. And I went through the surgeries and the chemos and the radiation. And I never shared that story with anybody. And it wasn't because I was ashamed of it. I mean, how can you be ashamed of it? It wasn't something I asked for, it was something I had. But I didn't share the story because I didn't want to be looked at as vulnerable, as fragile, as weak. A number of years later, I was giving a keynote speech at a district in Texas. And I decided that the keynote was going to be about owning your past, right? You can't change it. The past is the past, but you need to own it. And I spoke about the cancer. And I spoke about a number of other things. And when I got off the stage and finished my speech, everyone clapped. As Toastmasters, that's what you do. And I was making my way through the audience, shaking people's hands. And a gentleman came up and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Thank you." And he walked off. Now, I was swallowed up in this swell of people, so I couldn't really get to him to see him. But I did find him later and took him aside and asked him why he thanked me for that speech. And he told me that he was getting ready to go through the same thing that I had been through. And now he had somebody he could relate to. Wouldn't have seen that impact. Wouldn't have known it was there, but it was an impact that was below the surface for this individual. As leaders and individuals, we often meet others of different cultural backgrounds, of different ethnicities, of different everything. Freddie's question this morning about perspective is key to understanding individuals around the world, to understanding everyone within this Brady Bunch box of squares that we have here. Everyone has a different perspective. It's the respect of that perspective that's key. So you don't have to agree with everybody. You don't have to agree with anybody. Half the time, I don't agree with myself. But it's up to us to understand the perspective and why. By doing that, I truly believe that we can build bridges between each other, that we can build bridges that will tear down some of the struggles and challenges we're having. It's not about agreeing with everybody. We don't need bobbleheads. I tell that to teams I lead all the time. I don't need bobblehead leaders on my team. If you're all going to just agree with me, go away. I'll do it myself. If you're going to bring a different perspective, bring the perspective. As I've had the fortune to travel around the world and have physically spoken on 5 continents, I've learned the importance of understanding the individuals that we're interacting with in order to make a positive impact on them, in order to be able to relate to individuals where they are. And that's the key to change. Relating to individuals where they are, not where you want them to be. Too often times we try to pull people towards us instead of working our way towards them. Not sure why we are individuals who feel resistant to change personally, but are willing to try to change others. Doesn't that seem diametrically opposed? I encourage each and every one of you, as you tell your stories, as you interact with others, be vulnerable. Relate to their vulnerability. I'll share a quick story with you, a quick analogy, if you will. How many of you have seen a guest come into the club? They've sat down and you're trying to make them feel comfortable at the meeting. They're terrified being there anyhow, right? They've already told you, I'm here because I'm terrified of speaking. And what do we do to that individual? We ask them to do table topics. The most terrifying thing for many of us that are seasoned speakers. And that individual gets up to the lectern because they don't want to be embarrassed by sitting it out. And they grab a hold of that lectern. Their knuckles are white. They're swaying side to side. The president doesn't know if they're going to pass out or not. The VP of membership just said we lost another one. And they barely make it to the green flag. And they sit down. Yet you clap and you encourage them. And they come back. And they do it again. And you clap and you encourage them. The next thing you know, they're stepping into leadership roles. They're taking stage. They're commanding it. They're giving speeches. They're up on the stage in the World Champions. because of the impact that you made on them. That little impact. How big a deal is it to clap? How big a deal is it to say, you did a good job? Small things to be changing individuals' lives, leading to big impacts at the far end. How many of us would be here where we are today on these stages if someone hadn't given us that small change in our lives? If Les Brown wouldn't have said to me, find a Toastmasters club, would I have ever been an international president? If Freddie hadn't attended her first club meeting, would she have ever gone on to become an accredited speaker? Don't know. But those small changes led to big impacts in our lives. Can you change the world? Yes, you can. One person at a time. Let me leave you with this quote by Edward Everett Hale. I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. Do what you can do to be the change in this world. Madam Toastmaster.